everyone. Happy Friday. This is Professor Benjamin, and we will be concluding the roundup for this week. And remember, you'll have 2 quizzes due by Sunday, 11:59. So that is June 13th, 14th. So by June 14th, you'll have your language and your industry quizzes due. A lot of you did a great job on your forum posts this week. Just a couple of you are kind of trailing off. I know there's so much going on in the world, and this class is probably the last thing on your mind. Like when you registered, you were like all gung-ho, and now you're like, I can't believe I registered for this class. But please remember to stay strong all the way through the finish line. Some of you are kind of getting a little weak sauce on your posts, so please make sure they're meeting the word requirement length, paragraphs, you're not including your opinions, you're using factual basis, so all of that. And stay strong to the finish line. Remember, you don't get an award if you don't go through the finish line, so make sure you stay through the finish line. I hope you enjoyed a week off from an assignment due. So that is this week. Upcoming week, we're going to cover ethnicity and we're going to cover religion. Your last assignment of the semester is due except for your revision. But your religion assignment is due. It's a PowerPoint presentation. You'll see that I included in there some religions that may not be familiar to you. Some of them, they may be familiar to you, but I chose these religions just because I want people to know that people, besides the main groups of religions, there's also other religions that people practice. And so I want you to be aware of those religions. And that's why I gave you a list of religions that you can choose from. Okay, so pick one from the list that you think is interesting and do your assignment on that. And this is the easiest assignment you'll have this semester. So please make sure that you hold up the standard and submit a very good assignment. It's an easy way you can get an A on this assignment, but you have to meet the requirements for the assignment. So by Tuesday, 11:59, you'll have your religion post due and your ethnicity post. By Thursday, 11:59 next week, you'll have your response post for religion and for ethnicity. And by June 21st, you'll have your religion quiz, your religion assignment, and your ethnicity quiz due. Then we have our last week of the semester, so we'll cover folk and popular culture that following week, and we'll cover development and globalization, and then you'll have your paper revision due. Remember, you can submit that now if you would like, but you're going to revise either your urban patterns or your population assignment based upon the grade you received. I did give you guys feedback. A lot of your feedback is going to be that turn it in report, grammar, spelling, maybe sourcing issues, so make sure you go back and look at that. And as always, if you have a specific question or you want some more feedback about how you can improve your paper, you're more than welcome to reach out to me. So this week, I'm going to spend a little bit of time on ethnicity because it's amazing how this, I guess this course knew to have this section during the semester at this time because it is very relevant to what's going on in the world today. So I am sorry for you religion people. I am going to skip religion. Well, I'm not going to skip it, but I'm going to provide more feedback in the ethnicity area. So we will be covering more ethnicity this week. So I want to go over what's ethnicity mean, how does this relate to race, all of that. Also your census, it has some questions. We need to talk about what ethnicity and race are in terms of the census. So human beings are often identify themselves using either a combination of terms, such as, your race, your ethnicity, your nationality, and even your gender. People do, though, often, we kind of know the difference between nationality and gender, and people often actually use the term race and ethnicity interchangeably. But as far as the census is concerned, they're two separate things. Ethnicity is defined as the identity with a group of people who share the cultural traditions of a particular homeland or hearth. Race, on the other hand, is the biological construct and is defined by the text that we're using as identity with a group of people who share biological ancestors. So they are two different things in terms of definitions, biologically, and then who you just identify with. So they're two different things, and the census categorizes this into two different areas. So you'll notice on the census that Hispanic is not considered a race. It's actually considered an ethnicity. And so this topic has come up numerous times. Should we add Hispanic as a race? And the terminology has gone back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And the consensus is that we'll leave it as an ethnicity and not as a race. And there's pros and cons to both of it. But I included a reading on here about it, why Hispanic is not a race on the census, so that you get a better understanding of what we mean in terms of those two separate categories, ethnicity and race. Also, as geographers, we look at race a little bit different. In fact, we really don't even look at race in terms of geographers' standpoints. And the reason is because race, we reject classifications of humans into races because these classifications have no place. Remember, in geography, we look at place, like a specific place. And race actually is not related to place. And that's why we really don't look at race that often. We look more at ethnicity because it's culturally based. So there are a little bit of differences. I know for some of you this may be hard to understand, but skin color is one aspect of race, and it's more palatable to geographies primarily because it determines where people live and work. And so it's a little bit interesting about that idea of race and why geographers really don't look at it as much because of that place aspect. The major ethnicities that we kind of look at or identify with are Hispanics, African American, Asian Americans are three major ethnicities that a lot of people relate to. So we'll talk about that. And I want to specifically, of course, talk about segregation and race. Of course I do. Because I also want to talk about nationalism. What is ethnicity and what is nationalism? Because this idea of nationalism has come up in the United States. It has bubbled up. It has always been here, but it has bubbled up more under the presidency or under the administration that we have currently. And I want to read you, I'm going to give you some books that you can access or read. They're not free. Of course, you could buy them from Amazon. But I want to talk to you about a couple of these books that I have and that I always bring into my curriculum in the classroom. Online, it's a little bit harder because I don't have the books to share with you. But I want to talk about this idea of nationalism and how long it's been around for. So nationalism or nationality is defined as identity with a group of people who share legal attachment and personal allegiance to a particular country. So right now you'll hear a lot of white nationalism, or you'll hear a lot of American nationalism, the America's great nationalism. And this is that idea that we're tied to this idea that make America great again. And it goes back to that idea of tied to white nationalism. So it's loyalty and devotion to that nationality. That's what nationalism is loyalty and devotion to that nationality, which can be both a centripetal force and a centrifugal force. Is the idea that it either unites people or it divides people. And in the case of what's going on in the United States, it is dividing people. It's not the idea that we all belong to this. It's the idea that America was great, used to be great when white nationalism was the main point. And it's not that it isn't now, but it was kept under wraps a little bit more. And I'm going to read a little excerpt from a book called Race Against Time by Jerry Mitchell. And this is a fantastic book that I'm reading right now. And it is about the 1964 Mississippi burning cases and how this investigative reporter was able to finally convict those Ku Klux Klan members that were responsible for the murder of these three civil rights, these three civil rights activists. And in his book on page 94, he actually writes this paragraph. And as I read it, I was like, oh my goodness, this is what is going on with the presidency right now. And he says, similar messages made their way into the hearts and minds of many white Americans through publications as Beckwith's favorite newspaper, The Spotlight. And Beckwith was a primary leader in the Ku Klux Klan in 1964. The radical right tabloid, passing itself off as a patriotic publication, supposedly boasted a circulation higher than the conservative magazine, The National Review. Spotlight promoted America First, criticized welfare, pushed immigration limits, and opposed free trade. To conceal its racism, the publication referred to Jews as international bankers and praised former KKK leader David Duke without, of course, mentioning his past. And, I mean, this is 1964, which is not very long ago, and he's writing about this, and it just feels like it's today, again. And that is where I want you to be aware that reading this book, you realize how many individuals in public office, etc., is trying to drive a specific narrative, and has always been trying to drive a specific narrative. So that's one book that is really good on nationalism, white nationalism, race, and how it all ties together. Another really good book, because you're going to talk about in this chapter, is about the ethnicity and also race, and how migration has happened with both ethnicity and race in the United States. And there's a really awesome book called Making Our Way Home, The Great Migration and the Black American Dream, by Blair Imani. It is fantastic. A really great picture book, something that you can share if you have younger brothers or sisters, or you have younger children. A really good book. It's a picture book. It has beautiful drawings by Blair, but it also has some historical context with it, which is great. And then the other thing is The Color of Law, A Forgotten History of How the Government Segregated America. And I think this is a fantastic book as well. And it's a really heavy book on redlining. So get your hands on that book too. It's a fantastic read. So all of these books are a fantastic read. If you're interested in what's going on in the United States today and how it has historical context to it, these are all fantastic books for you. But I want you to, think about segregation and how it's still in white nationalism and how nationalism can either bring a country together or divide it. So you'll read about that in this chapter this week. Also, despite 1954 and the Supreme Court decision that segregated schools are inherently unequal, integration of the national schools remains an elusive goal. We'll talk about this week. Most schools are either majority African American, Hispanic pupils, or virtually none, and that is how it goes. Is that while we technically have desegregated schools, segregation of schools is still mainstream in the United States today. I know in the school district my kids attend, and it's one of my biggest pet peeves, is that it is mostly white. And I have a big issue with it. In fact, it's a discussion in our home on a regular basis, is whether we should send our kids to a different school because of that. Is that I just don't feel like it has enough diversity in it. And so I think it's a conversation that all of us need to have in terms of how schools are, while we have desegregated schools, we also, in doing that, we've also segregated schools even more. I have a lot to say about all of this. So I hope you find this ethnicity chapter interesting. Try and get your hands on those books if you find them interesting, and have a great week. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Stay safe, stay positive, and get your work done. Okay. So we only have a week or two left of this course, so stay strong.